Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our FinTalks webinar series. For all of you celebrating Ramadan, I wish you a wonderful Ramadan, and I hope that everything's going well and you're enjoying this month. My name is Susie Zira, and I head communications at Bahrain FinTech Bay. I'll just give you a little background on this webinar. We're going to be live for about 30 minutes. Our conversation between the panelists will last about that long. And then what we'll do is we'll open it up to a Q&A. You can ask any questions at any point, and I'll be looking out for them in the Q&A box or in the chat. And hopefully we can get to them by our panelists towards the end of the conversation. So I'm just going to give you a little background on Bahrain FinTech Bay for those of you that maybe are not from Bahrain or just new to the webinar series, and in general the ecosystem in Bahrain. So what primarily we are is a FinTech ecosystem builder. We collaborate with various market players, which include government bodies, financial institutions, corporates, investors, and innovators, and those who believe that technology can bring added value to the financial industry. Our key areas in which we work upon is basically we do corporate incubation. We have a co-working space based in our capital in Bahrain, and we also conduct research on trends in FinTech. We provide venture acceleration, and we create awareness through many of our events, such as these ones, such as the FinTalks. I'm super thrilled to have with me today and to announce, first of all, before I announce the partnerships, to announce our collaboration with R3 to create opportunities for startups and enterprises in the MENA region. This partnership will provide key resources and tools for blockchain-based startups and enterprises within MENA to test, validate, and implement their products with end users and accelerate their expansion within the ecosystem. So I'm really thrilled to announce that first. And then also, basically, I'd love to introduce our panelists. So first with me, I have David Vacher. David is basically the venture development lead for Europe and the Middle East at R3. He's also helped a lot of startups find product market fits, get production ready, and accelerate their go-to-market strategy. Hi, David. Welcome.
Hi, Susie. Thank you very much for having me. Really excited to be here. I'm really excited to kick off our partnership to help support fintechs within the Bahrain and MENA ecosystem.
Welcome. I also have with me Sid Bahdari, who is the founder and CEO of New Bridge FinTech Solutions. Sid basically has a company that operates depositbook.com, which is a global marketplace for wholesale deposits. Hi, Sid.
Hi, Susie. Very excited to be here and participating with the panelists and sharing our experiences and thoughts. Thank you for having us.
Wonderful to have you. And last but certainly not least, we have our own resident and also Ahmed Al-Mugabi, who is the founder and CEO of eTaxChain, which is a fintech and regtech VAT software that help GCC banks and SMEs prepare tax return invoices. They basically mean as first tax technology SA is powered by blockchain and machine learning. Welcome, Ahmed.
Hi, Susie. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here.
Wonderful to have you all. So, I mean, basically, David, I'm going to start with you to tell us a little bit more about the R3 Venture Development Program. That we'd love to hear more. I'm sure our listeners would love to hear more about what exactly that entails and what is involved in that.
Yeah, thank you, Susie, and thank you all for joining us here today. It's an interesting few topics. So, just by background for those who are unfamiliar about R3, so we're an enterprise software firm, and we really started off around 2015 as a consortium led by some of the world's largest banks and financial institutions to really ideate on this concept of blockchain, but to see how we can make it work, especially in highly regulated industries like financial services, which is actually 4 times more heavily regulated than pharmaceuticals. So it's this industry-wide collaboration remains at our core, and we now run one of the largest blockchain ecosystems. So we have approximately 350 plus firms, we have their regulators, cloud providers, systems integrators, tech firms, and our enterprise blockchain platform, which is called Corda, delivers that trusted exchange between parties. And we now more recently also have a confidential computing offering called Conclave, which really helps customers to be able to share and process data without compromising confidentiality. So big things which are essential in the fintech and financial ecosystem. So the venture development program specifically, which I'm involved in, helps these early stage blockchain startups find product market fit. So it's really a continuous program, and that serves as the gateway into that wider R3 ecosystem. So we help connect startups to enterprise customers, to corporate partners. our global network of mentors and investors. It's really a cost and equity-free program that's supported by this international team of experts, as well as us running the program, that helps these startups to, at the early stages, validate their idea, at the middle stage, help get production ready and get their tech build out, and at the final stages, connect with customers, secure funding, and really just accelerate their production and scale into these enterprises.
Thanks, David. I think sure we're going to have a lot of questions around that in a little bit. I guess, Sid, I'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about, and then I'll also direct this question to Ahmed afterwards. Tell us a little bit about your solution and describe, the problems you are trying to solve for financial institutions, and how blockchain has been, used in order to able to do this.
Sure. No, thank you, Suzy. So essentially, we are a platform, as you mentioned, a global wholesale marketplace, where we connect banks on one side and with corporate and institutional depositors on the other side to be able to exchange liquidity. So one of the key problems that we were looking to solve was there was no exchange for liquidity. So in terms of money market deposits, commercial papers, or any other instruments. So we thought that it's a great opportunity with now more banks becoming tech savvy or going for digital collaborations with ecosystem, corporate treasurers looking for not only just maintaining relationships with their home banks, but looking at global opportunities. We saw that creating a marketplace which can connect both the parties and then help facilitate the exchange of deposits, onboarding, KYC of the customers in a fast, seamless, and secure manner would be a big issue and a big problem statement, because from a bank's perspective, it provides them a digital funding channel for them to go and take deposits from customers where they don't have presence. So, a bank based in Bahrain could, originate deposits from pension funds in France or Norway. And that is the kind of and creating that digital infrastructure without having to pay for it becomes a very, what I call as a positive non-zero sum game. And from the customer side, you have corporate treasurers looking at one single portal to allocate their cash across different counterparties based on price discovery, based on other criteria like diversification risk. So that's what we are doing. And for us, blockchain is one of the key underlying technology which can help solve multiple problems. But I'll just focus on from a very particular use case of ours. We see that today cross-border KYC could take months and months of realization because of various requirements for each regulatory jurisdictions. So to create some sort of an authenticated exchange of documents and create enablement of placement of deposits, blockchain brings in a lot of transparency. The other big area of disruption is area of settlements, where we see that today we are still guided by correspondent banking system. So money, pretty much in a dollar cross-border transfer goes through various jurisdictions till it settles, and it could take T+1, T+2, and it leads to loss of interest. By creating some sort of cash-backed digital token system which can create atomic settlements using the blockchain or underlying technologies, could help instant settlement of cash. So these are the two big use cases that we look at from blockchain implementation.
Thank you, Sid. Ahmed, how about yourself? How did this help with e-tax chain? And what are some of the challenges you faced?
Yeah, so thank you, Suzy. e-tax chain, let me give you a bit of background. The GCC have just implemented the value-added tax in the region. So with that, we needed to bring in software to help banks automate the process of tax return preparation and issuance of their tax invoices. And that's where e-tax chain comes in. In terms of the use of blockchain, imagine a bank have like 10,000 corporate customers. And if you have that invoice that gets issued, distributed among the participants in that transaction, then you can severely reduce the cost and time on checking on that one invoice, as opposed to everyone checking that invoice at their end.
Thanks, Ahmed, for that. David, I guess I'll come back to you. Like, so how does the R3 Venture Development Program support, and let's talk about what are some of the major challenges, and how does the program support fintechs that are going through some of those challenges?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I guess I'll relate it to the MENA region and some of the fintechs here. And Sid and Ahmed brought out some of these issues, these sort of the legacy problems that are faced now. Adoption of new technology is really generally driven by innovative startups. Now, we've seen a lot of the emerging tech adoption within the Middle East being the shining example of this. So the unique features of blockchain can potentially greatly benefit a lot of the traditional financial institutions within the MENA region, especially where there's a lot of legacy infrastructure as well as regulatory burdens that have to be considered. So it takes a lot of time to develop this, to deploy it, to then build a user base, and then scale that within an enterprise or a regulated entity, or indeed a central bank. So that really puts a lot of the most even innovative businesses under a lot of short-term pressure. I mean, especially on their cash balances. So what the venture development program really aims to do is solve many of the problems of where startups may fail to deliver on that innovation into these enterprises. So part of that is the technology, but really it comes down to the core essence of why so many startups fail. And there's been a lot of research into this. CB Insights are probably the most comprehensive data set. And the biggest reason about this is no market need, which seems, something which can actually be avoided from the start by validation rather than building. And this is something which we help a lot of our startups with within the power of the R3 ecosystem, which has many of these financial institutions, the central banks, the larger consortium. So before the startups build a blockchain or build a solution based on blockchain, we first spend a lot of time validating the need for this and helping them to do this, to really find out whose problem you're solving. How big is this addressable market? Are they willing to pay for this? On what basis have you got that information? How does your solution really solve things versus what they can't do internally themselves? So a lot of it is actually spent on that side of things. Then when they have validated and realized that it is time to build, then this is where our tech expertise, as well as our tech mentors, as well as solutions architect, help to get that tech infrastructure in place, to integrate it with cloud, to figure out how the DLT will fit into a wider tech stack, as well as how they'll be able to pay for a lot of this going forward. Because of course, as their business scales up, a lot of the transactions will start increasing, or various cloud credits that seem fine now obviously start to get a lot more expensive. Then at the final stage is where we help them, is at that acceleration phase when they are ready to sell. So firstly, selling into financials, being a prime example here, which we're discussing. It's a very much not simply a case of knocking at the door and saying this is going to be needed. It's very much do you pass the infosec checks? What's the regulatory requirements? What kind of legal and compliance checks have you done internally? So a lot of that is as well something which we help them with, and that's where our industry connections, as well as the mentor program, a big focus of our program is one-to-one connections with industry experts and the mentors to try to help along that process, and then likewise continue to expand that within members of the R3 ecosystem, such that the blockchain startups are really ready to sell. And then the final stage is really to help secure funding as well. So that's opening up a wider ecosystem around funding to make sure that they do have that runway to be able to do that. So it's really all aspects of helping innovation be delivered on, and to be delivered on in a scalable manner.
Thanks, David. I don't know, Sid, if you have anything to add about that. How do you feel about it, and how did the program itself support you and your startup? If there's anything you need to add to what David just said on the kind of support that they give.
Sure, no, absolutely. So, when we started conversations with R3 and, discussing our use case, there was tremendous amount of support. And as David was saying, though there's a technology element of it, but there are also numerous problems which a fintech startup faces, be it from a funding perspective, be it from sales strategy, to even mentorship in the industry. So I think what R3 does is really create that 360-degree approach for helping their venture acceleration cohort. And what we learned was that not only we were interacting with the technology experts who could kind of validate our use case, but also getting in touch with some of the vendors who have delivered similar kind of projects before, or who could understand. So through this funnel, we could actually get a very wide sense of experience and learning from speaking to different types of stakeholders in the ecosystem. So for us, it was extremely useful, and we continue to stay in touch. David and his team have been superb in helping us move forward with our project, which started as an idea, but now taking shape as obviously a real life use case.
That's lovely to hear. Then so it's building of the whole ecosystem, so the support on all around. I don't, Ahmed, if you have anything to add to that on your side, your experience in the equation.
Yeah, I think David and Sid covered that mostly, but I would say three things. The support. Number one, the webinars, which are very focused on the state of the issue today. And number two, the credits that you can get through R3. And three, the direct access to David. I can just message him and say, I need help with this. And
I like that, direct access to David. Great idea. Used it, abused it.
and David would immediately reply.
Fantastic. Well, I want to ask something that's out there, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers want to hear about it. In all three of your opinions, what do you see as some really exciting and interesting developments ahead, in the space? David, I think I'll start with you since we're doing a whole turn. Like, what, in your opinion, are some of the more exciting or interesting developments ahead?
Yeah, and it's such a fast-growing space, and as I said, the ecosystem is evolving, and it's great to really see how much things have really picked up over the last 6 months or so. But if I had to pin down some areas where we're seeing probably the most amount of interest, I would say asset tokenization has really taken off. I mean, a lot of people see this publicly with NFTs. But really the whole concept of digitizing money, digitizing real estate, let alone, digitizing works of art, can really unlock value and create liquidity. And that's something what we've seen from a more holistic perspective really get a lot of interest. Central bank digital currencies, something which a lot of the press has started to pick up on. That almost every bank has, or every central bank now has a view or an exploratory conversation to this. That was very different to just a year or two ago. So that's certainly a huge stage, because that has moved business models towards payments and the benefits of a digital sovereign currency. So that's really transformed a lot of business models of fintechs as they look at their payments infrastructure rail. Another one is environmental impact, and especially within blockchain, it's enhancing ESG. You have the trusted secure data set there, and you can also do applications to prove carbon offsetting. And I think the final one where we've probably seen again the most amount of interest is around the concepts of identity and verification. So this could be in terms of digital identity and passports, and obviously vaccine passports, which are getting a lot of interest at the moment. But likewise, also the global pandemic has really highlighted the fragility of various supply chains. This could be manufacturing supply chains or delivery ones, but even as Sid alluded to, some of the processes within banks and some of the movement of assets along banks as well, the fragility or the lack of transparency onto that. So those are probably the biggest areas where we've seen most interest over the last year.
Thanks, David. What about you, Ahmed? What do you think are the most exciting things to watch this space in?
Yes, so overall, it's a very exciting period in our region, and I see now a trend coming up. So we saw payments being covered, and I believe now the next phase is everything beyond payments. What are the problems that we face today that a fintech and regtech can come in and help with? There are many of those problems if you go out today. I'll just mention like one example. All corporates do not work in isolation. They work in coordination with each other. For example, David touched upon the environmental aspect. I'll touch upon the environmental and the social aspect of this. As we transform from a paper economy to a paperless economy, and moving away from isolation to coordination, blockchain comes here. You do it once, you check it once, and whoever need that information gets that information distributed to them. For example, for those who need one, today, if you complete the installment on your car, okay, the first thing that you need to do is visit the bank and request that the name of the ownership transfers from the bank to you for that car. But that's not it. You need to change also the insurance on that car. And you need to go to the traffic department to effect those changes. Now that's an example where there are 3 entities in one transaction. If you do it once and you verify it once and then that gets distributed, by just doing that, you're cutting the cost by more than 50%. Over to you, Susie.
Yeah, but over to you, Sid. I don't know if you have any words to add to that.
Sure. So no, absolutely. I'll take the question from a fintech trends in general. So as David said, and I couldn't agree with him more, asset tokenization is absolutely something which will grow into tremendous proportion, both from an issuance perspective. So, the way equities are issued or bonds are issued or how real estate is sold, it will, through tokenization, it will create much more efficiencies, less number of intermediaries, more transparency, and having a very valid price discovery mechanism. So for me, that is very transformative as far as the financial market is concerned, and it will only grow. And I think the other point which David also mentioned from an ESG perspective, how do you really, today when I speak to a lot of my customers, they're saying, is it ESG certified? So how do we really validate each and every company or a bank to have what quality of ESG matrix? And ability for platforms to be able to do that real-time scoring on those and be able to can direct those investments to the right consumers or even institutional investors is a big growing trend. Last couple of elements which I'm really excited about is obviously in generally the continuing trend of financial inclusion in fintech. Now you really see people who are able to even have with very limited incomes could actually be first banked in emerging markets like India and others, but also after being banked, be able to even invest in portfolios to have some savings directed in a more productive manner. And there are apps which enable you to do that. So that's a very exciting trend, which I see that will only grow, to serve bottom of the pyramid. But on the other side of the spectrum, where you saw corporates, financial institutions, which were slow to adopt. And, if you really ask for me an example of a corporate treasurer, they would still be, calling up numbers and speaking to banks and, negotiating trades or negotiating rates or terms in a very, very traditional method. Now they are realizing that, there could be within their treasury, they can adopt fintech companies which can help them manage their day-to-day function in a more efficient manner. So I think corporates looking to become more fintech enabled is again a growing trend, which I'm very, very excited about.
Yeah, we're also very exciting things ahead. And I mean, like Ahmed said, it started with payments and now we're just, we're all over the place. I just want to go back to the program, back to David. Just if I've got a few startups, I can see there are some startups, some names I particularly know. Just some advice to them and how do they onboard? I mean, obviously you can write to info at Bahrain FinTech and I can connect you to David. They just want to know maybe a little bit more a little more on how they start the process to get on board and some advice in general you have for them.
Yeah, well, I mean, anybody who's considering, we're very much open. If you are building on blockchain or you do have a data solution, that's it. I'll leave my LinkedIn there, so by all means feel free to contact me directly. Very much if you do have MENA as an addressable market, of course, very much go via Susie and the Bahrain FinTech base. So we work very closely together to both help support startups in together, because our combined ecosystems are much stronger. The advice also that I would simply say to startups is, what we say from the very beginning is that blockchain will be the enabler technology. Everything that we've discussed here today, as Ahmed and Sid were saying, it's a great use case. It's a great use case for this double spend, also the double check problem that he was saying, that you don't need to keep checking things over and over again. It's a great solution for tokenization, because again, you can unlock a lot of value and a lot of liquidity from these otherwise dormant assets and turn these. But these are ultimately just uses of that technology. You need to figure out what works for you, what you're capable of building, and who your customers will be. So really always start with that first. The technology can always be molded around how you need it to fit around that.
Absolutely. Thanks, David. I'm not sure if there are any questions. I think now's the time to ask if anybody's in the audience have any questions towards. Oh, there we go. I think you can see it. There has been a lot of interest. This comes from Jay Shankar. I cannot pronounce your name, but I'm going to try my Jay Shankar Athaparathu. There's been a lot of interest and push for verifiable credentials in the field of data privacy and e-governance. I would like to know what the esteemed panelists think about extending VCs to fintech applications.
Okay, well, I'll take a go at that. If I'm understanding the question correctly, and please jump in if not, but yes, there has been a huge amount for verifiable credentials in e-government. So this is obviously the global pandemic has brought this into light, but in general, if you think about with supply chains, and I gave that example, people just don't know where the stop is, what's happening. And linking it back to ESG and linking it back to impact, a lot of people want to know where their food is coming from and what cause that's causing to the environment or not. So this all really comes down to this. So a verified credential could be a person most likely, but it could be anything, an entity, an organization. So there's a huge amount of this. Now, as understanding the question, extending to VCs and how they look at that, yes, this is a growth area. So VCs are very much looking at this as a concept. But again, there's a lot of digital identity and a lot of verified credentialable startups with different use cases. So where VCs are really targeting are, do they see the biggest growth potential on this? For example, probably the largest ones at the moment is twofold. One within the personal or somebody's own digital identity, or self-sovereign identity as we call it. So having a digital version of yourself, the same as you're now moving to digital money, which everybody's now becoming more familiar with. There's a next stage of that move to digital identity. That's an interesting case, because then you can use that interchangeably. And likewise, at the other end of the spectrum, it's KYC, AML verification for corporates and for identity. And particularly within the MENA region, a lot of the central banks and the financial institutions will need to do that in a scalable manner. And again, this is something which can be, once you've done that once, you can, in theory, do that for a lot of organizations. So hopefully that answered the question.
I hope, Jay, that answered your question. If not, just please ask a little more. Fawaz Shakrala as well on asking a question, does R3 have a demo platform where it allows us to test or develop a quick POC for use case related or fraud or counterfeit cases?
Yeah, I mean, when we say a demo platform, so the Corda is itself open source. So it's all the code is there and it's fully open source. So you're welcome to build and do what you like. We have also a Corda network, which you can deploy on. So if you'd like to test it on yourself, so that's all possible as well. But yeah, the technology itself is fully free, available, open source. So you can build as you feel like, and whatever use case you have. And that's a very interesting use case in terms of fraud detection.
Fawaz, I hope that answered your question. We have also Zainab Al-Hamar, who's is in the audience. She's got a company, but it's not a blockchain startup, but she has a project that she'd like to be related to blockchain. Can we join the R3 program? So I guess she's asking about what does it take to join the R3 program?
Yeah, I mean, if ultimately we are a blockchain company as well as a data company with Conclave, so if there's an angle where blockchain could come into play, or there's a data sharing angle, then 100% we can do. So yeah, I'll need to know a little bit more about the project, but
Again, I guess then just, if you want to write on your registration, there's info at Bahrain FinTech Bay if you don't see David's LinkedIn, and I'll just introduce you and, see how you guys can, basically discuss your idea and see if there's a way forward with R3. I think that works. Does anybody have any more questions?
I just noticed there was also one question on ESG certified. So I think Roweda asked, again, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name, about ESG. So to answer that question, perhaps Sid and some others have another take on this, but there isn't really a Moody's or an S&P or an index specific certification for this. And this is really something which is a huge thing, because a lot of companies are saying they're ESG tolerant, and this is really where blockchain will come into play. But there still isn't a global definition that everyone's agreed on what it means to be classified as ESG certified. So no, there are permutations of this, and certain angles of this will help the rankings, but there isn't like a globally widely accepted certificate for that.
Okay, Roweda. We've got one more question that just came up while you were speaking. Is from Saad Rati. What about the cost of implementation? I guess it's more of a question about how the cost. Is it considered a high? Is it high because it's a new technology for financial institutions? I guess there's more question about the cost of implementation.
Yeah, Ahmed, do you want to take a take on this?
Yeah. So we have to go back to what problem you're solving for the financial institution. I'll talk about us, okay, and what the cost is to us and the financial institution. Let us see what's happening today with the tax. As a financial institution, they have 100,000 transactions in a day. Would it be possible to do that manually, to prepare tax invoices and check them? That's one question. The second question is, this financial institution, when they raise a tax invoice, it's with another corporate customer, for example. How many corporate customers they have? Let's say they have 50,000 corporate customers. If you count today the cost of handling the tax transactions between the bank, the financial institution, and its customers, doing it manually, as opposed to having a software that prepares the tax invoices for them and the tax returns for them. When you compare those two, then there is no comparison.
Absolutely.
And so from that point of view, let's give you an example. If a bank issues a tax invoice and gives it to a corporate customer, guess what happens? The accountant at the financial institution and the accountant at the corporate customer, both of them checks that same tax invoice. Okay. In addition to that, both of them have auditors to come and audit these tax transactions. Now let's put the technology into picture and say that whenever that tax invoice gets issued, it gets prepared and checked once and then distributed among the financial institution and the corporate customers. By just doing that one simple thing, you're saving 50% of the cost. And then if you take into account that building on Corda, it's on the cloud, the cost is way, way less than the benefits of it. Over to you, Susie.
Unmute. So it's still the expression for 2021. I'm on mute. Thank you, Ahmed. Well, I hope that answered most of your questions. Again, this is the beginning of a partnership with we're all here to help. So if you have any more questions or you want to basically see you get in touch with David or maybe even with Ahmed or to get a little more insight, please feel free to write back on the info email. I'd really like to thank my panelists today for joining us. I think it's the beginning of a great start, and I hope to see more startups join this program, and also to get more involved and to see how important it is to be a part of this if you are interested in taking this on. So thanks again, thanks David, thanks Sid, and thanks Ahmed. And thank you for panelists, thank you to the audience for joining us today.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Susie.
All the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.